Good morning. Uh, Shalom uvracha to everyone. It's early on Thursday, Erev Parshat Bamidbar, or correctly Bimidbar, as we start a new Sefer in the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. It's the 46th day of the Omer. We've been counting. We're getting close to the end of the count and getting close to Shavuot. I want to wish everybody, I hope everyone is well, and all those who are ill in our community will soon be healthy. We've been counting, and it's interesting, this week's parasha also begins with a count of Am Yisrael. The Torah begins very, very quickly and says, Se'u, after it tells us when this occurred, in the second year after they left Egypt, Se'u et Rosh Kol Adat B'nei Yisrael Mishbechotam, Lebeit Abutam B'mispar Shemot Kol Zachar Legulgalotam. Count the congregation, the sum of the congregation of Israel, according to their families. A count here of every male, according to the number of their names. And this counting, raised the question amongst some, why are Bnei Israel, specifically the males in Bnei Israel, being counted again? We just counted them a few months ago when they prepared to build the Mishkan and collected monies to build the Mishkan. And so what exactly is going on in terms of the count? And here we have the very famous comment of Rashi, Mitoch chibatan mina'an. Rashi, citing the famous Midrash, because the Jewish people are so beloved to God, God counts them on a regular basis, like a person who has a treasure and constantly is looking at it, touching it, counting it, making sure that it's okay. And so Rashi has this very, very beautiful, meaningful, very ennobling and very heartwarming comment about God's love for Am Yisrael. It's a beautiful concept, and it's something that does move us very much. On a pshat level, of course, the Bible tells us seems to be going in a different direction, because if you look carefully at the text seems to tell us pretty clearly why there's a count now, that this count is different than the previous counts. The Torah says explicitly that you should count those from 20 years up. All those who are fit to go into battle. And the Torah then continues and tells us later on that they gathered them, Kasher Tziva Hashem et Moshe, Vayu b'nei Ruvain b'chor Yisrael toldotam l'mishpachotam. This was the sum of the children of Reuven. Kol zachar mi ben esrim shana v'mala kol yotzei tzava. All those who are fit to go into battle. And once again, all those who are fit to go into battle. It's a recurring theme. Kol yotzei tzava. Kol yotzei tzava. Sometimes the reality is that census and the counting of people is in order to prepare for war, in order to prepare for battle. Bnei Yisrael are ready to enter Eretz Yisrael. They're ready to begin their life as a people, a nation in its land. And the recognition is that there will be war. The recognition is that it will be difficult. It won't be simply miraculous, that they will simply enter without any need for battle, without any need on the human level, to engage in hostilities, to be able to protect themselves and their families and their nation. And so the count here, in terms of Pshuto Shel Mikra, as the Ibn Ezra and many others note, is in order to prepare for the battles that are upcoming, to enter the land of Israel to take hold of the land of Israel and to sustain the nation in the land of Israel. And that's why the Leviim, who do not have land and don't go into battle, but rather protect the Kodesh, they protect the Sancta, and are running that part of the community, are given exemptions from that tremendous and difficult task. And so there's counting. We've been counting Sfirat HaOmer, but there's also counting to go to battle, to go to war. Unfortunately, this week, Am Yisrael has started to experience that feeling of counting to go to war, counting because of the terrible hostilities. What's been going on, we've all been following with tremendous tension and dread. What's going on in Israel, what's going on in Gaza, the escalation by Hamas of violence directed in a way that we haven't seen before, rockets that have been reaching parts of Israel that we've never seen before, and the sustained indiscriminate attack on communities, on cities, on civilians. And Israel has had to respond and had to count and bring up soldiers and started to mobilize. It's in an air campaign that we hope will successfully bring this to a quick conclusion, as there's so much suffering, so many people sheltering in place, children who can't go to school, people who have to run for cover. It's terrible and it's horrific, and it never can be justified. Whatever happened never can be justified, what Hamas and the terrorists are doing. As we also recognize that innocents are killed in war, there are unfortunately too many casualties. Israelis who've been cut down, little children, adults who died because of the rockets. We also recognize that even as Israel has tried to be, and is of course being as careful as it can, attacking Hamas commanders and Hamas rocket batteries, there's also going to be, in the nature of a very dense population, there is unfortunately innocents who die, and we cry for them, and we recognize that. It does not mean that Israel does not have the right and the responsibility to defend and try to shut down Hamas, but it does recognize that we feel that pain also of the civilians, and we hope and we pray quickly that Hamas is shut down, either through military means or through diplomacy, to bring this round of violence to a conclusion quickly. And of course, we're very concerned about some of the intra-community tensions that are coming to the surface in Israel, the terrible violence that was instigated by some members of the Arab Israeli community against the Jewish community in places like Lod and Akko. Horrible scenes, as President Ruby Rivlin earlier this week called them a pogrom. And the Israeli response that tries to keep that in check. And again, it's the responsibility of the government and the reaction of some hot-headed individuals within the Jewish community to take the law into their own hands, as has been denounced by all responsible political and religious leaders across the board. It's something that we can't countenance. We cannot allow ourselves, our community, our friends, our families, with all the rage and with all the justifiable anger, to take the law into their own hands and kill God forbid, murder, or God forbid, harm innocent Arab citizens, innocent Arab Israelis, just because they're Arab. That simply is not morally, halachically, politically, ethically justified in any way, shape, or form. And we want to see that also come to an end. We've been counting these days, counting Sphira. We've also been counting the days that this goes on, and we hope that it quickly comes to a close. We hope that the counting should not be related to war anymore, but we hope that the vision of Rashi, that the counting of Am Yisrael should be because of love, because of peace, because of connection to God. That's what we want to return to, that these days, that by this week we can celebrate Shavuot, everybody can celebrate Shavuot in peace, in some sort of account of love, rather than account of war. Shabbat Shalom. We all hope for a more peaceful Shabbat and peaceful Shavuot as we come together. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.